On today's show, let's chat all about three Cavs role players, Caris LeVert, Cedi Osman, and Isaac Okoro. Thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Go do that right now.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and NBA for places like Down UpRoxx, SB Nation for the Sword. That man is Evan Dammarell, the proprietor of Down Euclid, also at For the Sword. Busy week of Cavs basketball ahead of us. Magic Wednesday, Boston in prime time on Friday. On Wednesday's show, we'll give you the
Correction,
perhaps
my friend.
what?
Boston in prime time is in Cleveland next week.
Is it now? Oh, okay.
November 2nd.
Well, here you go. This is why my brain is just mush. Wednesday will be entering in with Paolo Banchero and Evan Mobley in some ways. Hopefully, I'm hoping Evan Mobley guards Paolo a lot in that game. And we'll also get it. Tuesday will be a Cavs meet availability day, so maybe on Wednesday show we'll have some more information on what's going on with Darius Garland's eye. So we'll update you that on Wednesday. But today's show, though, is going to be all about three Cavs wings, three Cavs role players, three players who I think matter a lot to how deep and competent this team is. They are in the way we're going to talk about them, in order of how we're going to talk about them today. Caris LeVert, Cedi Osman, and then Isaac Okoro. To start with Caris LeVert, Evan, let's run through his numbers to start the year. This is 3 games, small sample sizes. Take that for what you will. 34.7 minutes per game, obviously amped up to overtime the other night. 11 shots per game. He's shooting 50% on 4.7 3-pointers per game. 15.8% on 2-pointers. We'll come back to that. 11.3 points per game, 6.3 assists per game. His previous career high was 6 per game in a 12-game stint with the Nets in 2020-2021 before he got traded. So Evan, Caris LeVert wins the starting 3 job in camp, has come out shooting the 3 really well, shooting horribly on 2-pointers. What have you made of the first 3 games of Caris LeVert and how he's looked so far?
Well, like the preseason, I'll be frank, I think Cedi Osman is best being utilized in this role as a spark plug off the bench, so we'll just kind of remove him from the conversation for now for the starting 3. Like you said, LeVert's shooting okay-ish from 3, not shooting well inside the arc, but he also just hasn't had any legitimate competition for the starting 3 spot as well. Like Isaac Okoro just has been a net negative across the board for the Cavs in terms of offense and just his production overall. So when it comes to LeVert, he is still, it looks like, trying to figure out what his role is as the 5th banana in Cleveland's starting lineup, maybe the 3rd or 4th scoring option in certain lineups as well, maybe even the 2nd option depending on who he's running out there with. I mean, let's be frank, since Darius Garland's gone down, it's been the Donovan Mitchell show. He's averaging 35, 6, and 7 since Garland went down, Mitchell is, and like LeVert, Osman, Love, Wade have kind of benefited from it, but at the same time, like, they're not getting as many shots as Mitchell does because Mitchell's attempting almost 25 a game. So the Cavs are still kind of trying to find that balance. I think they're needing to figure out LeVert as the 5th option and how LeVert can be effective without the ball in his hands. Just from a 3-game sample size, it hasn't been a ton, but like you see some encouraging signs. You see a little bit of what you saw during the preseason where LeVert, when he crashes the glass, is looking to push the Cavs on the break and kind of utilize their young legs and their speed and athleticism to get easier looks, whether it's on the interior with a cut from Jared Allen or Evan Mobley or even Isaac Okoro more sometimes, or Cedi Osman or Donovan Mitchell or Kevin Love or somebody else on the perimeter. Like, the Cavs are multifaceted in the break, and the assist numbers are what's really intriguing with LeVert overall right now. Is like he's acting as a very nice tertiary playmaker, and I think at least what you're getting from him right now is kind of what the Cavs were hoping they got last year when they traded from him from the Pacers. And it's good to see. I just need to see a little bit more of it before I can firmly say, like, yes, the Cavs have solved their starting 3 issue. But for now, he's just had no real competition for fighting for his spot right now. So can't really say like he's being pushed or anything like that. I'm sure he is, but it's been a mixed bag. I think there's some good, there's some bad, but the good kind of outweighs the bad right now. Just with how much of a terror Donovan Mitchell is on offensively, you can kind of just ignore some LeVert ickiness.
The LeVert thing it's just like with the way he's played and what like the film and the numbers combined to sort of say about what he's been is just like it's a bonkers start for LeVert in a lot of ways. So like he's taking fewer shots at the rim than he ever has, which makes sense in some ways. He's 40% from three would be a career best mark aside from his rookie season. He's in terms of how many shots he's taken. 54% on non-corner threes in terms of value. I mean, he's not taking a single corner three. He's shooting 18% on mid-range shots, which is down from roughly the 40% he's been at the last few years. Right now, Evan, he's at 60% according to NBA.com at catch and shoot three-pointers on almost 2 a game. He's at 44.4% on pull-ups on 3 a game so far. I think the two things that have really worked for him are, number one, he's playing faster on offense. I think he's not just playing iso ball and kind of being the most inefficient version of himself. The Cavs are getting him in spots to make passes, to have an outlet for himself, to be a connector piece. He's also just taking threes in a way that I think is good because I think he just needs to take them for him to be functional. It is just, there's this weird thing right now where like he's making way more than he's reasonably going to make. Like this is going to totally, the number of threes he's making is particularly, I think, pull-ups. I mean, 60% on three-pointers on catch and shoot is crazy, but like 44.4% of pull-ups would be like an insanely good year for Caris LeVert if he kept that up. That's going to drop, and at the same time, you would assume just kind of the mid-range stuff also kind of clicks in. So he's probably going to normalize in that way, but I think what stands out in terms of probably sticking is the pace and the way they're using him. So offensively, I think that's where he is. What have you made of his defense? This is, I think, the thing I have less of a feel for 3 games in.
I think you're right. It's hard to finally fully gauge where he's at defensively because if you look at game 1, Pascal Siakam feasted, but then in game 2, he did a pretty good job defending DeMar DeRozan, and then, I mean, Zach LaVine just went off because he had fresh legs, but it's tricky to fully gauge it. And then in game 3, like, Caris and sometimes Jared Allen, too, took the opportunity and the challenge of taking turns defending Brad Beal or Kyle Kuzma, and, like, they did a pretty good job doing that as well. Like, I think a lot of it is attributed and can be given credit to is how Cleveland's defensive system just works in general. Like you notice more often than not, they try to encourage the opponents. They try to funnel them in towards the paint, and they run into Mobley and Allen, and then they just kind of have to throw up a shot at the rim. And more often than not, it just doesn't work out for the opponent. But at the same time, like in terms of isolation or positional defense, like it's been hard to gauge, like you said, because it's a 3-game sample size where like there was one bad game, one pretty good game, and then one not so, like, just average game. So, like, he's been somewhat fine, somewhat frustrating, so it's hard to fully get a scope of it, and it's something definitely worth watching as the season kind of evolves.
I still don't know if I totally love what he, like, playing him as your 3 with Garland and Mitchell ultimately looks like. I think he seems to me, Evan, to fit better and for what he's doing and sort of what I think he's really good at in terms of when he's with just one of those guys. And we've obviously really just seen it with Mitchell so far. But I think he just makes more sense kind of filtered into a different role. And like this is maybe the through line of this whole episode in terms of what we're diving into here. This is really all just about the Cavs and these role guys in different ways. I think trying to find roles that kind of accentuate this core 4, kind of what they do well, all that stuff. That's what this is really about, I think, in a lot of this more than anything else. And I think Osman, who we'll talk about in the next segment, has been the guy who has really just flourished in exactly a perfect role for him. LeVert is obviously more of an adjustment, but he's, I think, for what my expectations were and kind of how the end of the opening night went, I think he's been maybe a little bit better than I would have thought, but I'm particularly defensively. I want to see how this kind of manifests, and let's see what the offense looks like with him when those numbers do sort of normalize into less insane 3-game sample size things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And if he absolutely tanks and Isaac Okoro is still floundering, the Cavs could use today's first sponsor, Chris, to maybe fill out their vacancy at the starting small forward spot. Why don't you tell us about it?
Oh man, he got me mid water chug there. But gonna tell everyone about our friends at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and free. All it takes is filling out the right information and clicking a few buttons. You'll be searching for that next great team member. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Finding the right team member is paramount to ending the year strong. We know that here at Locked On Caps because we added Jake Stevens, and we're absolutely thriving with Jake and adding on to Vendery with Jake in tow. And you need the right tools to do that. LinkedIn is that tool. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, back here on Locked On Cavs, Chris Manning, Evan Dammarell. Let's talk about Cedi Osman. Evan, Cedi Osman has been, I think, very good to start the year. What to you has stood out with Osman through 3 games?
He looks comfortable. I think you're seeing what Cedi Osman was his best at last season before Ricky Rubio went down. I think maybe having Donovan Mitchell just kind of constantly force-feeding Osman, and the fact that the Cavs are just kind of taking a page out of the Jazz's book where there's a lot of spread pick and roll with a big man in either Jared Allen or Evan Mobley crashing towards the rim. And then you're starting with shooters, whether it's Osman and Wade and Love or just, a mix of maybe LeVert's in there too. But Osman's benefiting just from the gravity and the defense collapsing on Donovan Mitchell and then him just kind of being available whenever they need to have him. Just had the ball kicked out to him on the perimeter, and he's been good. Like, I am cautiously optimistic this is sustainable because once they bring Darius Garland back, they'll and then eventually Ricky Rubio as well, like they'll consistently have playmaking at the point guard position, and then guys like Cedi Osman where you don't have to ask too much of him other than, okay, Cedi, we need you to float around the perimeter, maybe crash the glass every now and then, and if you're able to get a hockey assist or just be like a secondary or third playmaker in this offense, that's what they need you to do. But obviously the top priority is shooting. And the Cavs just kind of consistently finding him in the spots where he likes it and just kind of maintaining a steady rhythm and flow is good for him. I think that's just the key thing with Cedi is like you need to find a consistent role that works for him and not ask too much of him or maybe just throw him in the doghouse because defensively sometimes he's going to get shredded, but he's been good so far. So like the offense definitely outweighs some of the defensive issues that Cedi possesses.
I think the Mitchell point is key because I think the case for me with Osman is that it's different than what Rubio provided, and that Rubio was setting him up, was feeding in to get him clean looks, was about like, okay, I'm going to just pump him passes and get him shots. Mitchell's presence and his comfort with finding shooters and familiarity with doing that is really, I think, unlocking Cedi to just be really comfortable and do what he does. The thing about Cedi is that he is not a perfect player. He is, I think, like most guys sort of in the middle of your rosters, they're going to be a mixed bag. These guys are not superstars. They're not awful. They're average in a lot of ways. That is most the case for a lot of guys. What I think is happened with Mitchell is that because Mitchell gets attacked, kicks out, and is generating clean 3-point looks, Osman can stick those. So far, he is shooting 57.1% of 3-pointers for the year. He's taking 4.7 per game. He's at 58.3% on 4 catch and shoot threes per game. He's at 50% on less than 1 pull-up per game. That split, I think, is optimal for Cedi. I think you want him just pumping catch and shoot threes, maybe attacking closeouts, maybe kind of swinging the ball a little bit. That's kind of all you really need him to do on offense. And Mitchell, I think, is juicing that out of him. I think like if we're still, I think, figuring out, Evan, how exactly we know who the rotation guys are. We don't know exactly, especially because of the Garland eye injury. We don't really know what combos work. what JB Bickerstaff's inclinations are, of who he wants to play together and stuff. One of the things I think we should say so far is I think I would like to see Mitchell and Osman playing with Mitchell would really benefit Osman's far. I mean, this is a guy in 28.3 minutes. He's taking 10 shots per game. He's absolutely hoisting shots. So far, it's working. His numbers, like LeVert's in some ways, are going to come down. Like, he's not going to shoot almost 60% from three, but the process feels pretty strong to me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think when it comes to Cedi, and a lot of it's like Caris LeVert, like the 3-point numbers may not be sustainable long term. It's going to be safe to assume they regress back to the mean a little bit. They kind of show a bit of their averages. A different example completely is Ricky Rubio kind of started coming back down to earth a little bit before he tore his ACL, and he started to see maybe more of the Minnesota Ricky Rubio instead of this quote unquote Spanish national team rather, Ricky Rubio. And I don't know if it's sustainable in terms of Cedi's shooting, but like it's definitely encouraging. Like you said, like it's hard to find out like what the true balance is, just because the Cavs have been without Darius Garland other than the first 13 minutes of the season against Toronto, or that he played at least. And it'll just be interesting to see how they utilize things. I think Cedi has definitely carved out a spot in this rotation. You and I have talked about this a little bit, I think, with the dynamism between Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell being able to split duties as the point guard. It really opens up the back end of the rotation for the Cavs. Maybe not play Halo Neto as much, or maybe like situationally play more Robin Lopez, but like it definitely gives Cedi Osman a spot. And Dean Wade to an extent as well, because they both have a skill set that the Cavs direly need in three-point shooting, because it's weird. The Cavs are like one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league through the first 3 games so far, and that's not going to be sustainable. But like if you have guys that are comfortable and consistent, that's a good thing. It's just now you have to figure out what is your grand rotation when this roster is truly fully healthy, because guys are going to lose spots when Darius Garland comes back, when Ricky Rubio comes back, and if they make a trade at some point this season as well to maybe round up the rotation.
Osman is just in this spot, I think, where like he just fits with what they really need, and like I think you have to like hope that some of this. I think the other part of this is that I think he's also just not been a disaster on defense. He is still biting and reacting, and he gets caught leaning at times, but I do not think this has been objectively as bad of a defensive performance so far as we've seen from him in the past. And I think like it was interesting to Evan to hear Bickerstaff on Saturday or Sunday, talk about like he's like, the scoring is like the thing that like that's the bonus with Cedi. And I don't really I view that as like I don't know if that's exactly how I view it, just because I think what you need Cedi to do is make shots. Like that's really what his main utility is. But I think if that's the message Bickerstaff is sending to Cedi, and I think this is, if we go back to when he got benched, I think in Sacramento, like way back when, and going in and out of rotation times last year, the thing they've always kind of wanted from Cedi is him to do more stuff, to not just be like a gunner. And now he's taking the 10 shots. Like he's taking almost like a shot every 3 minutes, which for like a role player is like I love that energy from him. But like he's also at least he's not being great at the other stuff, but he's at least trying, and that's kind of what you need to do for him to justify like almost 30 minutes a night. And maybe that goes down to 2022 when Garland's back. But like this looks like a guy that you need to play a bunch of minutes this year just to maximize what your offense can be.
I mean, the irony is not lost on me that the Cavs are taking many pages for what worked with Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz last year, when Cedi Osman was the biggest advocate of saying that the Cavs need to play more like the Utah Jazz. At least under Quinn Snyder.
I mean, Mitchell has talked about how they've taken sets from the Jazz.
Well, you can really see it when they're playing Donovan Mitchell at the point. Like they're running a lot of spread pick and rolls, a lot of off-ball screens, just trying to get shooters open, and also just give Donovan space to either get clean looks on the perimeter or drive to the basket and either dump off to his big, or like you said, he's just really good at finding guys on the perimeter, and Cedi's just a guy who's benefiting from Donovan Mitchell just being on such an insane tear to start the season.
Yeah, whereas like Darius Garland is incredibly good at like feeding, I think, guys for lobs, and he's like very good at those interior passes. Mitchell is like just an astoundingly good perimeter passer when he's looking for shooters, and that's I think really pops so far. Okay, one more break. Yeah, go ahead.
So I did ask Donovan about this after the home opener, just with his familiarity with Evan Mobley, and it is interesting, like how he and Darius are different passers, and Donovan kind of touched on that a little bit, saying like, listen, I want to build comfort and familiarity with these guys so that we're more multifaceted, so teams have a harder time defending us because Darius passes one way and I pass a different way. And like Jared Allen said, in terms of the pick and roll, like Darius Garland's a lot more clean and quick, and Donovan Mitchell kind of snakes to the basket and kind of is a little bit more methodical with his passing. It's interesting to watch how those two kind of function similarly and differently at the same time.
This team, one of the, again, we said this a lot on Sunday show. One of the real bummers of the early start to the season is just that like some of the ways this team was going to evolve offensively is sort of on hold. A large part of that is because Garland is out, but also like Evan Mobley's been pretty to start the year offensively. And as this thing evolves, I'm very curious to see what the final form looks like. Okay, one more break. Let's come back. Let's talk about Isaac Okoro, the one guy in this list who I think we will say has not been playing good basketball. I want to tell you real quick, and thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game-to-Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game-to-Game on Locked On NBA. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, last segment on Locked On Cavs. Let's talk about one Isaac Okoro. Evan, he has made one shot this year. It was a drive. It was a nice finish, but he has made one shot. 3 games.
He's made 2 shots, bro.
Oh, he's made 2. I only remember the one.
Here are his stats for everyone at home. In 19.7 minutes per game, Isaac Okoro is averaging 1.3 points on 20% shooting. He's hit 0% of his threes, 1 rebound, 0.3 steals, 2.3 fouls, and 1.3 turnovers per game. 0 assists, and he has attempted on average 2 3-pointers per game. So it's been, not great for Isaac out there.
And furthering the note about his minutes, he's down about 10 minutes per game from last year. So he's at 19.7.
He has replaced Cedi Osman in the JB Bickerstaff doghouse, it feels like.
So he was at 29.6 last year. I think the Cedi Osman doghouse is a little different because the Cedi Osman doghouse was like, what if I just don't play you every game?
He has a shorter leash compared to last year, where like JD really advocated during the preseason that, hey, they put Isaac Okoro in a box last season and told him he'll do limited things offensively. It feels like they're putting Isaac back in that box because he just does not look comfortable offensively out there.
Here's the thing, though. Isaac Okoro is a role player. Isaac Okoro is somewhere is like the Cavs' 8th. That's what he is. He is, by definition of that, on a team with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen as a lob threat, and Kevin Love is a better offensive player, and Caris LeVert is going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to get put into a box. They can say publicly, like, we want to empower him, like, we want to do all this stuff, get him out of the box. He needs to succeed in his box for him to get minutes. I think the Wizards game was probably his best game. He makes a shot. Had some really good defense on Bradley Beal. He had a couple moments where like he either defended Beal really well and Beal just made like an outrageous Bradley Beal shot because Bradley Beal's really good. He also just had a couple times where he was able to shut Beal's water off and contain him. But it's just, again, with him, he's such a negative on offense, and he's not an all-defense level guy where that outweighs the concerns. Teams are still just saying, Isaac, stand wherever you want, my guy. Do whatever you want.
We don't care.
We don't care. And that's just a problem. And, like, he's taking threes. I think the release that we saw in the preseason where he's at least firing them when he takes them, there's not that... doesn't feel like he's waiting, but he's not making them. And this is just... Nothing can change, Evan, I think, unless he starts just like sticking 3-pointers or doing stuff on offense that makes teams react to him a different way. Nothing can change until that happens. And if that doesn't happen, like this is just what he is.
Yeah, then unfortunately, that's just what he is as a player because it's year 3. You need some type of leap, some type of juice offensively. Yeah, it's 3 games in, so we're not going to crucify Isaac Okoro fully yet, but the returns have not been promising, especially when he was kind of carrying a lot of momentum after 2 pretty good preseason games to wrap things up, and then
those are now just like buried under the ground.
Oh, it's dust in the wind, and like the Chris Fedor feature on him and how like he was working with Noah on the shot mechanics and stuff in like a 45-degree arc and things like that. And like you saw the confidence at times during preseason where he didn't hesitate as much on the perimeter, like, which that is good. But the preseason is a different beast than the regular season, especially the playoffs, where the Cavs don't really have the time, energy, luxury, and resources to let Isaac Okoro kind of figure out his offensive rhythm and flow when they have other guys who are much more refined offensively and guys who are able to contribute much more immediately offensively. And I'm not going to sell the ship on Isaac yet, but let's say this is still pretty bad 10 to 15 games in, and then you're getting closer to the trade deadline eventually. Like, I would strongly consider using Isaac Okoro as trade bait to get a rotation piece and send him to a team where maybe he has the luxury to just like really grow and develop as a player, because I just don't think he'll ever get that runway because of where the Cavs are right now in this window of theirs where they just leveled up in a pretty dramatic way compared from like where they were starting last season to now, where they just don't have that runway to say, okay, Isaac, we're going to let you just go ahead and shoot the ball 10 times tonight, and if you miss 8 of those shots, that's okay. Like, the Cavs can't afford to be wasting possessions by letting Isaac Okoro try to develop offensively.
I don't think you're getting a rotation piece back without adding other stuff in.
I think there's an intrigue. Yes, adding other stuff in, but I still think there's teams that would be intrigued with him.
Sure, but it's like, I think jumping to that is like a little too far for like me personally. I think that's like jumping just like a little too far.
Maybe it's the cynic in me talking too. I don't know.
It's just like, I think trading a guy whose cap number is so low and you've already traded a bunch of your picks to get Donovan Mitchell as you should have. Like, you don't have, like, that's why like LeVert and Cedi are like the easy trade pieces, because like they have these bigger numbers and are expiring, and Okoro is about to be contract extension eligible and makes a much less amount of money. I think it's like closer to the Cedi number. I'm gonna look this up as we're talking here, but like it's like LeVert is the one where it's just like, okay, like you can match that number a little bit easier and figure that out. Yeah, and Okoro just is at a
he's making number. $7 million this year.
So that's like close to Cedi. That's not like unreasonable, but it's also just not like that's not like you're having to get the kind of player you, I think, are kind of hitting on here, and fans I think would be happy with and the team would be happy with. You need to stack that with another number to really get into the range, unless there's a bargain player that becomes available or whatever. I think the trickiest thing with this is that there's like this is where I think he just ends up maybe being in a 15 to 20 minute range, because like if you look beyond him for wing options, you could be like, hey, you know what, Lamar Stevens bigger, all that stuff. I think we're in some ways a worse offensive fit just because he's a worse shooter than Okoro. You don't have Dylan Windler is just you can't Dylan Windler doesn't exist as far as like real minutes are concerned. He's hurt again, that sucks for him, but it's just like, how can you count on that more than Okoro?
His real minute opportunities probably with Garrity and the Charge this year, where he again tries to show that he has some juice left in that tank.
Yeah, I think
that's Windler, by the way, not Okoro.
Yes,
folks.
For Okoro and for the Cavs, the best case for all of this is just he improves enough where you feel good about it, and you can talk yourself into it, because there is not, to me, free agency next summer is kind of the place you go find a vendor and you figure this out, but there is not, I think, like a reasonable way to improve. You have to balance that line of trying to win as many games as you can, and also trying to get Okoro to be getting him comfortable. And I think every game, the Toronto game was an abject disaster. He was terrible. I think he has been better in both games. I think there's been stuff to like in the last 2 games in particular. Cedi has been much better. LeVert has been much better. That's why he's playing 20 minutes a game. That JB Bickerstaff playing him 20 minutes a game tells you what he thinks of him. That is just a fact. But let's see how this continues to evolve. And if it's these numbers are this, like, he's gonna hit a 3 at some point, you would think. But does it come Wednesday? Does it come Friday in Boston? Does it come against the Knicks? Like, when does it come? What does it look like? And does it mean anything going forward? I think that's. Let's see how this evolves. Where it's like, I think the other guys you're seeing, okay, LeVert and Osman, you've played well to start the year for the most part. Let's see how things normalize with you, and let's see where that settles you. For me, with Okoro, it is okay. Can he just be better? And is there actually growth happening here, or is it time to just be like, okay, like this is just what
Not
he is.
working.
And the vibes to me are sort of like you have to, I think, even if you're an optimistic Okoro guy and believe in his defense, and I would consider myself a believer in his defense.
Oh, I
think
am
it's time.
too. It's just the offensive stuff is just giving me pause. Sorry.
No, it's okay. This is just where you have to look. I think you have to just be like, look, this is what he is. This, you can tell yourself whatever you want about that and optimism. I think this is just a point where you have to just stare this in the face and be like, this is just what he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's just more or less been the same player offensively. Like where you'll see it kind of self-actualize and then it disappears again. And we talked about this after the preseason end. Like if he continues this hot streak, if like we see more of this, like that's great. I think he is finally turning the corner offensively, but he came to a screeching halt against Toronto. He wasn't awesome against Chicago either, and he played good defense on Brad Beal, and like I think that's what you can expect of Isaac Okoro, is like you can throw him on a guy. Yes, maybe he'll get in foul trouble playing too aggressively, but he'll play pretty good defense, and he understands NBA offensive concepts and Cleveland's defensive system enough to adequately defend without fouling too. So like, yeah, he could do that, but you just can't have a defensive specialist in your rotation if he's not going to give you anything offensively, because like, yeah, the Thunder made it work with Andre Roberson for the longest time, but like
different era of the NBA a little bit too.
Different era, yeah. That's the thing, is like a different era of the NBA, and like there's ways you can make Isaac Okoro work. It's just it's tricky because you already have guys ahead of him who are both playing well and guys who are just a little bit more reliable on offense. And this is a Cavs team that's kind of veering towards a pretty big overhaul offensively compared to where they were last season.
Like they're not a team, I think, with the shooting to really kind of just figure Okoro stuff out. And then on top of that, he is a solid defender, but again, I do not think he is the best. He is not like this is not an all defense level defender. He is fine and like is pretty good at getting stops a lot of the time. You feel pretty good, but I think I would say he's in the non-Mobley category, the guy I would trust like on an island late of the game. He is also just someone who is not like generating steals. He does not generate these other things that kind of would separate him, and you talk yourself into some of what he does. He's not creating transition opportunities via turnovers in that way, right? So where does that leave you? And like it's not like the Bruce Brown thing that we talked about a lot last year, where it's like, okay, Bruce Brown added passing out of the short roll, passing from the corners, hitting some corner threes at a decent enough clip to really make that work, and he fed off of what hit that infrastructure. Okoro is not feeding off of the infrastructure that is there. And like Cedi Osman is doing that. Caris LeVert is somewhat doing that. And that to me is what separates them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's just, it's tough. And I'll be very pleased to say I was wrong about Isaac Okoro in the season. If he does turn the corner and kind of find a happy medium where he is impactful on both minutes on the floor or both ends of the floor rather, and he's averaging 20-ish minutes per game, so he's able to make an impact on both ends adequately. But until he actually does, Cedi Osman and Caris LeVert are ahead of him in the rotation, and I think there's other guys you maybe look at, like Robin Lopez has played well in his spot minutes, and maybe there's just other minutes you see too, like Dean Wade's played well too. Like there's other guys that are just playing well, and you can kind of soak some minutes from Okoro and give it to them and kind of reward the hot hand that you have going, versus kind of trying to make something work when you might be trying to force a square peg into a round hole right now.
Wade is the one for me, not so much. I think just because he's giving you wingish stuff, and like there's clearly a need for that more than like there is for like linking Okoro to center minutes or anything like that.
Oh no, for sure. Like Wade is adequate enough defensively, but he provides you shooting, and that's again something the Cavs just need.
And guess he attacks closeouts and he tried to dunk on Daniel Gafford so hard on Saturday.
That play was insane. So
and has
that's the
Okoro
thing,
had 2-3 drives all year, and he's finished like the one, but he botched that transition attempt, and it's like he hasn't gone up, and like there's just not the juice even on that stuff.
He really tries that awkward Euro step a lot during games, and it has not worked so far.
He gets there, and then he leaves everything short.
It's like he panics as soon as he sees the rim.
Yeah, it's like, or it's just like he It's just like maybe it looks too slow. I don't know. All right.
Sorry,
What's in
Isaac
there?
Okoro and your family, if you're listening. Hope your season turns around.
All right. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Cavs, for making us your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Also, check out your various Cleveland Locked On shows, Locked On Browns, Locked On Guardians, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Check them all out, everyone. Be well. We'll talk to you ahead of Cavs Magic on Wednesday.